Hi guys, welcome back. We're still reading We All Fall Down by Eric Walters, and today we're going to be reading chapter 10. So I'm going to get started here, and I hope you're listening. Chapter 10. We both stood there, no words exchanged, knowing that we had to silently wait and listen. It came again, a voice, soft and barely audible, but it was still there. "I think it's coming from the offices on this floor," my dad said, pointing at the door. He reached over and put a hand against the door. We both knew that the door would be cool, but I was glad that he was being careful. He grabbed the handle and went to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. He pulled harder. "Is it locked?" "It could be, but I don't think so. I think it's jammed," he said. The door itself looked fine, no buckles or bends or dents, but the frame seemed crooked, as though the wall was shifted over. "Help me! Grab the handle!" I grabbed onto it beneath his hands. "Now, on 3. 1, 2, 3! I strained with all my might, and the door held firm. I put my foot against the wall, and I used my entire body to try to muscle it and pop it open, sending me flying backwards. My grip on the handle, the only thing that saved me from tumbling down the stairs. I put a hand on the soaking wet landing and got to my feet. I peered through the doorway. It was darker than in the stairwell, and it was difficult to see clearly what was there. Suddenly, a beam of light stretched out and through the darkness. My father had turned on his flashlight. "Unbelievable," I mumbled as my dad let the light play around the room. There was a scene of complete devastation. It looked like a tornado had rushed through the place. The floor was littered with what had been once a ceiling. Tiles and wires and large pieces of metal ductwork, the heating and air conditioning vents were all lying on the floor. Up above were ugly, open, raw concrete and a mass of wires. There was water seeping through the ceiling and falling to the floor like a series of small waterfalls. And there was a breeze against my face, not strong, but a stream of fresh, clean air. Obviously, at least some of the windows had been smashed. Probably all of the windows had been smashed. My father shone the light in front of him. "There's smoke!" I yelled in alarm. I could see it drifting through the air in a beam of light. "No, not smoke," he said. "Dust." "Dust? Why would there be dust?" I took a deep breath. He was right. It didn't smell of smoke. "It's from the ceiling panels or the concrete or something. I don't know." There was dust drifting, suspended in the air. It was unreal, sort of like a haze or a mist or a fog inside of a building. My father walked through the doorway, and I hesitated for an instant, but followed after. I stopped just inside, holding the door open with one hand and reaching for an overturned chair. I grabbed the chair, and I put it in the doorway to stop the door from closing. I didn't want anything to prevent us from getting back out. "Hello?" my dad called out. "Is there anybody?" "Here, here," a faint voice replied. Where are you?" my dad answered as he waved the beam around the room. Here. The voice was a female and foreign and frightened. "Where? I can't see you." "Here, I hear." My father aimed the flashlight in the direction that he thought the voice was coming from. There was nobody, nothing. No, there was a hand waving from beneath some debris. We rushed over. It was a little girl. What would a little girl be doing by herself? No, it wasn't a girl. It was a small Chinese woman lying on the floor beside a desk. She shielded her eyes from the glare of the light. Her clothes were soaking wet and there was a large gash on the side of her head. "Are you all right?" my father asked. Hurt, she whimpered. "Trapped, hurt." In the edges of the beam, I saw that she was pinned beneath a fallen file cabinet. There was a large piece of metal ductwork that was smashed into the desk and ceiling tiles were scattered all around her. Had one of those hit her and caused that gash? "Hold this," my dad said, passing me the flashlight. I took the light and I tried to keep it on target, away from her face and down at where she was pinned, beneath the filing cabinet. My father struggled to move it, lifting it slightly away from her body. "Pull her out," he said. I could hear the strain in his voice. I put the flashlight onto the edge of the desk and the beam of the light shifted, leaving him and her in only partial light. I reached over and I pulled, helping her shift away, scuttle a few inches until her leg became free. I held on, helping her to her feet, and settled her into a chair. "Are you okay?" my dad asked. "No speak much English." "Your head, does it hurt?" my dad asked. She looks confused, as though she has no idea what we're talking about, which I guess she didn't. My father put his finger to his head in the spot her head was gashed. She reached up and she touched the wound and then retched in pain. She brought her hand back down and looked at the blood. She looked shocked, as though somehow she hadn't been aware that she was hurt there. What happened?" the woman asked. It was clear that she was struggling to find the words. "I think something fell from the ceiling and hit you," he said. "Maybe something like that," he said, pointing at a piece of ductwork that lay on the desk. It was huge and heavy and angular. If that had hit her directly, it would have taken her head right off her shoulders. "But why? Why fell?" "An airplane hit the building." He held out his arms, just like the wings of a plane. "This place?" she asked, sounding confused and shocked. "Yes, this building. We have to get moving. Can you walk?" She shook her head again, not understanding his question. He mimicked walking, moving his feet up and down in place, but she looked even more confused. He reached over and pulled her to her feet. "No, no, hurt," she protested. She pointed down to her leg. I trained the beam on her lower body. Her leg was ripped open and raw and swollen. My father eased her back into the chair and then bent down to look at her leg. "It could be broken," he said, "but even if it isn't, she can't walk on it. She probably can't even put any weight on it." "But if she can't walk, do we leave her here?" I asked. "We can't leave her here. I don't know how safe it is." I looked up at the open ceiling. I didn't like the water seeping through. If water could get through, the floor had been fractured or weakened, and then maybe more chunks or pieces could still fall down. I anxiously scanned the ceiling right above our heads. There was nothing there that could fall down, just open pieces of concrete. We were okay. Okay, unless the whole thing fell down on our heads. Was that a possibility? I didn't know. But I knew I didn't want to stay there any longer to find out. "We have to get out of here," I said. "Soon. Fast." "You're right. We can't stay." My father bent down in front of the woman so that his face was right at the same level as hers. How was he going to explain that to her, that we were leaving? We could send help back, but that would take a lot of time. A long time. And if I didn't feel like it was safe for us to be here for even another minute, why did I think it was okay to leave her here? "I'm going to pick you up," my dad said to her. "You're going to carry her?" I asked. "I don't see any other choice," he said to me. He turned back to her. It might hurt, but we have to move. I hope you understand." His voice was calm and reassuring. He stood up and then reached over and picked her up from the chair and cradled her in his arms. She cried out in pain, but she didn't fight or argue. I think she understood. My father was a big man, and she was very tiny. She couldn't have weighed any more than 100 pounds soaking wet, and she was soaking wet. "Lead the way back to the stairwell," my dad said. "Make sure I can see the way under my feet. I don't want to trip or drop her." I shone the light forward, marking the entire route toward the stairs, and then mentally marking it. I got up, I led the way, and then I trained the light backward behind me to illuminate the path for my father. "Be careful here," I said. I picked up a chair and I tossed it out of his path, shoved a desk over with my hip, and cleared the way as best as I could. I kicked away the chair I'd used to prop open the door to the stairwell. It was much brighter there. My father took the woman and set her down gently on the stairs. He pulled the bandana, the shredded tie, from around his neck and carefully placed it against the gash on her head. In the brighter light, I could see that the cut was deep and angry and her hair was soaked and smeared with blood. Thank goodness that the blood had almost stopped flowing. Her eyes looked glazed over. She looked stunned, like she was in shock. Was that because of the head injury, or was it because she couldn't get her mind around what was taking place? Without language, I couldn't find out which one it was. Either way, what did we do with her now? It's safer here, I said. We could leave her now that we've gotten her out from beneath the cabinet and onto the stairs. Maybe the people who are on our floor have already told the authorities, and maybe somebody's on her way to get her. I don't think so, my dad answered. My guess is that in all the confusion and the darkness is in the panic to escape. Nobody even noticed that she was still there. I can't imagine anybody knowing and deciding to leave her behind. That would be inhumane to leave someone like that. After what I'd been thinking, I suddenly felt bad, and all the confusion, the ceiling falling down, the lights going out, the windows smashing, I just think people rushed out, and there was no way for anybody to know or not know who had gotten out and who remained. It would have just been a pandemonium. I guess so. At least she's better off here than she was there. But not as good as she's going to be, my dad said, and he stood up. I want you to help her climb onto my back. You're going to piggyback her down the stairs? I asked, not believing what he was suggesting. I think that would be the easiest way to carry her. But down 74 flights of stairs? That's impossible. I don't know how many flights I'm going to carry her, but every floor down and away from the fire is a good one. You're supposed to evacuate at least 3 or 4 floors away from a fire in both directions. We'll just take it bit by bit, stair by stair, floor by floor. I helped the woman to her feet. Actually, her foot. She kept the other foot off the ground. My father turned around and then took her arms and wrapped them around his neck. She reached back and grabbed her, lifting her up and onto his back. She hardly weighs anything, he said. You lead. Sure. I was just happy to be moving again. And if I stumble, you have to try and stop me. From falling down. Yeah, sure, I can do that, I said. I started down, looking back over my shoulder at my father. Her arms were wrapped around his neck and her little head peeked out from beside his head. But the rest of her was completely blocked by my father's body. He was a tall man and very big. Funny. As I grown, it seemed that he wasn't nearly as big as I once thought he was. When I was little, he was like a giant. I remembered that he used to carry me around on his back like this when kind of like he was carrying this woman. This woman? What's her name? I turned around. I'm Will, I said in a loud voice, pointing at myself. And that's my father, John, pointing at my dad. She nodded. John and Vil, she said. Vil was close enough. Ting, your name is Ting? I asked, and she nodded. Hello, Ting, my father said. It's good for me to know the name of the person I'm carrying. The stairs were clean and bright, and the air was clear and fresh. Not only wasn't there any smoke, but there wasn't even a hint. No smell, no fumes, nothing. There was still some water coming down the stairs, but it was just a stream, not the flood that had once been pouring down higher up. We rounded another landing, and then another, and another. My father seemed to be moving, almost effortlessly. Ting was tiny, and we were headed down, but still, how long could he keep this up? He had to be starting to get tired, and if he got tired, what would that mean? Would that mean that he'd be more likely to stumble or fall? I looked back with renewed awareness. I didn't know if I could catch them. There had to be close to 350 pounds between them, but I was going to try my best. I hit another landing, floor 67. In just a few minutes, we had come down 8 flights. Are you okay? I asked my dad as he reached the landing. I'm good for a little while longer. His face was red and peppering with sweat. As I watched, Ting reached down with her sleeve and she wiped his forehead. Thank you, my dad said to her. Welcome, she replied. How are you doing up there? My dad asked. Are you okay? Okay, she said. Good, then let's keep going, he said. You sure you don't want to stop for a while? I asked. Stopping means we have to start again. As long as I keep going, I figure gravity will keep me moving in the right direction. You know, I could carry her for a while, I suggested. You? Well, why not me? I'm almost as big as you, and my knees are a whole lot better, I snapped. You won't get any argument from me out of that one. Let me go a few more floors, take a break, and then we'll talk about it. I reached the next landing and went to turn the corner, but there was no corner to turn. The stairs had just ended. There was a door leading off to the 66th floor, but only solid concrete wall where the stairs should have been. And that's the end of the chapter. We'll see you next time for chapter 11.